Hey everyone, it's Alex Martinez and Ryan Zomorodi. We're the founders of RealEstateSkills.com, and today we're going to dive deep into the assignment contract. So Ryan's already made some great videos about the wholesale real estate contracts, the residential purchase agreement in real estate. But today we wanted to cover what exactly is this assignment contract, how do we fill it out, and then answer some common questions from our community about the assignment contract. So we actually include this as a downloadable resource. So you can download it in the description below at realestateskills.com/contracts. Be sure to do that because this is a proven contract and you'll definitely want to follow along with this today in your hands. So Ryan, what is an assignment agreement in real estate?
Yeah, great question. If you're looking to wholesale real estate, if you're looking to just simply change the name on a purchase agreement, an assignment contract is actually a very basic contract in real estate. So if you guys have seen a real estate purchase and sale agreement, just to recap, that is the legally binding agreement for one party, which is the buyer, to purchase a piece of property, a piece of real estate from a property owner, which is the seller in that situation. So you can't have an assignment agreement without having a real estate purchase and sale agreement, right? There is no assignment of contract without that purchase and sale agreement. So first and foremost, you need to have an effective, fully executed purchase and sale agreement. What I mean by that is you need all the terms filled out, right? You need the price, the parties involved, the property address, earnest money deposit, close of escrow date. You need all the terms filled out. And you also need all parties' signatures on that contract for it to be legally binding. So assuming you have that, then what you can do is create an addendum to that purchase and sale agreement as an assignment agreement. So what an assignment agreement essentially does is transfer the rights and obligations of the purchaser, in this case, to another purchaser, right, to a different end buyer. And so what that effectively does is now the original purchaser is no longer the buyer on that contract. Mm-hmm. And so this can be beneficial for a number of reasons to both the buyer who's originally on the contract, which in our case is the wholesaler, and as well as the new end buyer, which oftentimes is referred to as the cash buyer, right, or the end investor. So what the assignment contract does, again, it just takes that purchase and sale agreement and swaps out with a new buyer, often for a premium, right? And this is where it gets exciting for wholesalers because this is how they make money using this piece of paper, which we call the assignment agreement, right? The assignment of contract. So on that agreement, which we'll actually walk through later in this video and show you exactly how to fill it out, is you can add your assignment fee. And so this is the premium, right? This is the payment, the compensation that the end buyer will actually pay the original buyer, right, the wholesaler, for the right to now purchase that property, to just slide in and have a already filled out, already performing, already executed contract for this new buyer to just slide into and fulfill the obligations under that agreement.
And we call that assignment fee also the wholesale fee. And for anyone watching, right, we said the word addendum. Just to understand, addendum means basically a change to the existing contract. And it can be an additional piece of paper just like this, like our assignment contract is, because we're going to use those words interchangeably. Agreement, contract, addendum, they mean the same thing. Just so, if you're hearing those words, right, you're getting into real estate and you're not familiar with it yet. And so, assigning a contract is our preferred method. And I want to ask you, why would you want to do an assignment, maybe versus other ways of collecting a wholesale fee? Why is that advantageous? Why do we like doing it so much?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. It's very valid because there's many ways to wholesale real estate. And an assignment of contract is our preferred way is because it doesn't cost anything to assign a contract, right? Assigning a real estate purchase and sale agreement and wholesaling via the assignment method is the lowest cost. It's the fastest way to wholesale a piece of property once you have it under contract, because you can put a property under contract and within minutes, you can literally assign that contract and earn a wholesale fee. So it's the quickest, easiest. It's literally one page, right? Like I've seen other assignment addendums, but ours is foolproof. It's one page. It's very simple, as you guys will see once you download it, and we'll actually walk you through how to fill it out. But it's very easy to understand, and it's once you wrap your head around it and thoroughly understand it, you can see how powerful it is. So it's simple, and it's also, getting a little more technical. Earning an assignment fee is one of the most simple and easiest ways to earn income as a wholesaler. Mm-hmm. So when you go into the other strategies of wholesaling real estate, which include double closing on a piece of real estate, which is where you have two purchase and sale agreements and you're buying and then immediately reselling that property, you're actually flipping that property. And it very quickly, but that income is treated as profit from the sale of an asset, right? So when you're assigning a contract, that's just considered ordinary income. And when you're double closing, that's considered profit, right, from the sale of real estate. So there is a different tax treatment. There's different accounting that goes along with that. And there's also, right, there's another method to wholesale real estate, the LLC assignment. So we won't get into the details of that, but that can be treated as short-term capital gains. So again, assignment of contract is just simpler. It's easier for, new wholesalers to understand. It's very well understood by, title companies, by escrow companies, by really anybody in the industry. Because assignments of contract happen, even in non-wholesale transactions. Mm-hmm. So it's just a very common agreement that happens all the time. So I think just from simplicity, from the ease, and just how fast it can really transpire is why we recommend it for new wholesalers, for experienced wholesalers, and it's just really the preferred method.
Yeah, it really is the easiest way to transfer the contract rights to another party. I mean, double closing, we can do that too. We have done that. There's just more paperwork involved, several pieces of paper rather than one, mm-hmm. Multiple contracts. Sometimes you have to have transactional lending in order to close the deal. And it's taxed differently. Yep. So the assignment agreement just way faster. It's why probably 95% of deals that we do, we use the assignment agreement. And, now the next question is, why is it important to use a proven assignment agreement rather than some random one online, or maybe even making it up yourself when you have no idea what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, just having been doing this for so long, working with, hundreds of students and just working with different wholesalers in various markets, all over the country, you'd be surprised at the different real estate contracts that, come across our desk, and, especially the assignment contracts that we see. And some of them are literally just a couple of sentences, and it's just really basic. So there's no protection for either party. It's not very clear and concise as to what's happening, so that even if you use a random assignment contract that's not very clear, right, someone else has to interpret that contract. Usually it's a title company or an escrow company. And the more clear you are and the more exacting you are with your agreements, the easier the transaction is going to go, the smoother it is going to be to collect your wholesale fee, mm-hmm. and ultimately make it a win-win. So it's good to know that you have access to a proven contract, right? We've closed a number of deals mm-hmm. in this past month using this exact contract. Mm-hmm. And so just using something that has been accepted by title companies in multiple states, that can work with realtor purchase agreements that are available for, the real estate agents in multiple markets, or for off-market deals where you're working directly with the seller and you're using, something like our purchase and sale agreement. Like, this can go with any one of those contracts. So it's tried and true, and really just protecting both sides, right? Because there is risk in real estate transactions, no matter mm-hmm. how safe the method is, right? Wholesaling is one of the safest ways to monetize in real estate, but it comes down to the contracts. Mm-hmm. Contracts are essential in wholesale real estate. So it is ultra important, really, to have that proven, battle-tested contract.
Yeah, and I think you said it best, too, just having that clarity with any contract that you have. Crystal clear clarity. So all parties, escrow, title, if you're using a real estate attorney, they know what the heck's going on. They can read this piece of paper. There's an understanding. Is there a deposit when the assignment happens? When is the assignment due? Is that at close or beforehand? Right? Having all of that clarity on one piece of paper is extremely vital. And like you mentioned, there's risk even if you use the most bulletproof contract in the world. And so depending on what state you're in, or no matter what state you're in, definitely check it out with a local real estate attorney too. Just make sure you cover your own bases, double check everything that you're going to get.
Yep.
But Ryan, how about we talk about how do we fill this out?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys want to follow along, just pull this up, and we're not going to go word for word. If you guys are interested in seeing a word for word walkthrough of this exact assignment addendum, as well as our wholesale real estate contract, right, the purchase and sale agreement, check out our other video where we actually do walk through line by line on both wholesale contracts, in case you want to get that full breakdown. So, but I do want to cover, how to fill this out at a high level. So just starting at the top, the first paragraph is where you state the parties involved, right? So you'll see a space for the assignor, which is the original buyer on the purchase and sale agreement. That is the wholesaler. And then the assignee is the cash buyer. That is the new end buyer for the contract, right? So this is the person who you're going to be assigning the contract to, who's going to be ultimately performing on that purchase and sale agreement and funding the transaction. So pretty clear, those two individuals or companies, those are considered the parties, right? That can be individuals or it can be companies, an LLC, a corporation, whatever that might be. It might be a trust. So that's where the parties go. Next up is just the effective date of your purchase agreement. So generally your wholesale contract, your purchase agreement is going to have a date associated with it. So it's probably going to be the last signature, the date of the last signature on that purchase agreement is usually going to be that date. Moving on, you're going to identify the property that you are wholesaling. So you'll definitely want to make sure you have the right address there, right? The street number, the street name, if there's a unit number, as well as the city and state. You might also just want to put the assessor's parcel number or the property identification number, just to be super exact. If this is an addendum to the purchase and sale agreement, so that should be specified in that real estate contract. However, it never hurts to be extra specific on this assignment addendum. So moving on, the next field that you'll fill in the blank is your assignment fee. So this is the total fee that you'll be earning from this wholesale transaction, right? This is the wholesale fee that you're working so hard to obtain. So if you want to make, right, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, shoot, put $100,000, whatever. This is the beauty of real estate. Whatever you negotiate with your end buyer is what you'll put here as far as your assignment fee. Now, what do you put in there? That's generally having to do with how attractive is that purchase and sale agreement? What's the discount to market value that you're bringing this property to your end buyer, right? How much potential profit is in it for this investor who's taking over your contract, right? So the better deal that you have under contract, the larger assignment fee that you can charge for your wholesale deal. So again, that's where your assignment fee will go on the contract. And then next is your non-refundable deposit. So this is optional, guys. So what we found is very effective is you can charge your end buyer a non-refundable deposit, which can be due at the time that they sign this assignment addendum. Now, if you do use this non-refundable deposit, they must pay that to you for this assignment agreement to be effective. So they will not actually have the rights to the purchase agreement until they pay you that non-refundable deposit. So that's why it's so powerful, especially if you've already funded the earnest money deposit on the original contract. This is your way of getting reimbursed and ultimately protecting your earnest money deposit. So we'll get into some, frequently asked questions later, but this is one of the most important ways to protect any money that you might have put into the deal already. And, a pro tip is that you want to make this amount more than the money that you've already put into the deal. So again, this just protects you in case this cash buyer, the end buyer for this deal, if they don't perform on the purchase and sale agreement, your money is protected and you might even turn a profit in case they don't perform, right? You still might be able to earn a wholesale fee even if they don't close on the deal. So again, this is optional. You could put a 0 here, which would mean that your entire fee would be due at closing. if you do put anything in here, then that is just a credit towards the assignment fee. So again, just in other words, if you have a $10,000 assignment fee and you're charging a $5,000 non-refundable deposit, then you would get paid $5,000 at the time that they assign this contract, that all signatures are on here. They would pay you that $5,000, and then the balance would be due at closing. So you'd receive the rest of the assignment fee at closing, which would be another $5,000. Now, just the only thing left on this agreement is just to mark the closing date. So in Section 2, under the terms and conditions, you would just enter in the closing date, which is the same as what's on your purchase and sale agreement, right? The closing date for the transaction. And then beyond that, you're just signing with your name, your company name, or your individual name and dating. So you just want both signatures. And you can do it over an e-signature software like DocuSign, digital ink, or you can do it the old-fashioned way and print it out and get that wet signature. So that's it. That's how you fill out an assignment contract. And if you're at this point, congratulations.
There we go. Yeah, this is how we turn this paper into checks, as we like to say, right?
Yep.
We turn it into wholesale checks. Now, as mentioned in another video, Ryan went super deep, not only in the assignment addendum, but also the real estate purchase and sale agreement. So be sure to check that out if you want a more in-depth review. And now, Ryan, let's hit some questions. I got some questions from the community. From our private exclusive community, our coaching students, but then also the YouTube community. So I want to encourage anyone, if you have questions, definitely ask below. We love talking about it in our videos and then also replying to every single question that we can. So let's hit this first question.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
So once a contract is assigned to a buyer, is the assigner still obligated to fulfill the agreements in the contract if the assignee backs out? So if the buyer gets assigned the contract, but then backs out after the inspection period, would that mean that I would be obligated to purchase the property? Thank you. And this is an important one.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question, and I definitely commend the individual for asking this, thinking a few steps ahead. It's kind of like playing chess. You want to understand your contract very well, which, again, is why we created that in-depth walkthrough video going line by line to empower you guys to move with confidence, to offer with confidence, because it is just knowing your next few moves, which can give you that advantage when you're under contract on a property. So great question. So it really will depend on your purchase agreement as to what happens in the case of a buyer default. So this question is really saying that, hey, I've assigned my purchase and sale agreement to a new buyer, and now that contract is non-contingent, meaning they're locked in, their earnest money deposit is now non-refundable. So if the buyer does not perform and close on that contract, then that would be considered a buyer default, right? You're defaulting on that contract. So what would happen to the wholesaler in that situation? So again, it depends on what your contract says about buyer default, but in our assignment addendum, it does transfer any rights and liability and responsibility and risk to the cash buyer, right, to the end buyer. So that is why you want to have a rock-solid assignment addendum to protect you as the wholesaler, and that you want to make sure that your buyer is now on the hook for anything on the original contract. That being said, I tend to err on the side of caution when it comes to your original purchase and sale agreement. So if your purchase and sale agreement says that the original assignor, right, the original buyer, even if they assign the contract, they are still liable for that original contract. So we just had a situation where a student brought us a deal, and I believe it was in Florida, using the Florida Realtor purchase agreement. And in that agreement, they have multiple check boxes which can give the purchaser the options to decide and designate whether or not they will be responsible after the assignment. So some contracts actually give you the opportunity to say, I am going to be responsible after the assignment, or I am not going to be liable for anything that happens after the assignment. So that contract is pretty interesting because it gives you the options. And so I would always revert back to what's in that contract. And so in the case that you are liable, like let's go with that, you want to mitigate your risk. So you have to pretty much assume, we always want to protect our downsides as smart wholesalers, right? As smart real estate investors going into these purchase agreements, because there is money on the line a lot of the times. So you want to mitigate your risk by understanding the contract. And so in that situation, if the contract says you are liable, then you just have to understand that what's that downside risk. So usually what the downside risk is, it's limited to your earnest money deposit. So it's called liquidated damages. You always want to look for the liquidated damages clause in a contract. And what that means is that if you default on the contract, the financial ceiling of any sort of consequence to the buyer is limited to the amount of the earnest money deposit. So again, if your buyer defaults, the biggest risk is that earnest money deposit will go to the seller. The seller will keep the deposit. So how do you protect yourself in that situation? You ask for that non-refundable deposit at the time of assignment. And so when you receive that, let's say that the buyer defaults, now it's essentially the buyer's money at risk. So you now don't have any money in the deal. And like I said earlier, if they paid you more money than you put into the deal as the earnest money deposit, guess what? You get to keep that money because that's how our assignment agreement is structured. And you might actually profit on a deal that you didn't even have closed, right? Your buyer didn't close and you didn't close either. So that's why we've structured it that way, so that when we have a buyer locked in, they're committing not only verbally, but they're also committing financially, and they're pretty much locked in. So again, it depends on the contract, but the way that we've structured our assignment addendum protects you even if you are liable. Now, there are scenarios where a seller could elect to pursue specific performance, which is kind of the other side of a buyer default. So what specific performance means, and I know we're getting a little in the weeds here, but I think it'd be helpful for everyone.
Absolutely.
Is specific performance just means they can take action to enforce the contract, meaning they can take legal action to force the buyer to purchase the property. So that is the worst case scenario. And in the Florida contract, it actually gives the seller the option to either A, take the earnest money deposit as liquidated damages and keep the deposit and release the buyer from any further liability, or the seller could elect to pursue specific performance and essentially force the buyer to close. So it's very unlikely. I've talked to numerous attorneys about this, and almost all of them say, hey, it's very rare that a seller pursues specific performance. They're just going to take the money and call it a day and just find a new buyer. Yeah. So in reality, the risk of that happening is very minimal, which again is why I feel comfortable even entering contracts where I'm still liable as the wholesaler, as long as I'm protected through getting that deposit from the buyer.
Great response. And just for some added color, I think, it's very important to understand that the contract, whatever contract you're using, an on-market contract for your state, any off-market contract, the contract, what's agreed upon, that's the law of the land. It's what everyone has agreed upon. And, we get questions all the time. They're asking specific contract questions, and we haven't even seen the contract. We don't know what was in the contract, what was agreed upon. And so, I know it might sound like the most boring thing in the world, but you got to read the contract that you're using, and you have to understand it. I think a lot of people aren't willing to go and do that. And I always like to say, just grab a couple coffees, go to Starbucks, read the contract, understand it like the back of your hand. They're pretty straightforward. You've been doing this for years. We've been doing this for years. Just understand your contract. What you agree upon in here is the law of the land. And it really is about mitigating your risk. And one thing we always like to talk about too with buyers, we're not finding random buyers that we don't trust at all, that we've never met, that we just have an email, we don't know their name. A big reason or a big way to mitigate your risk besides having bulletproof contracts is to just find great buyers too, that actually have a reputation, that want to close on transactions, that have closed on transactions, that do have a track record. Because they understand these contracts too. They understand if they're leaving you high and dry. They don't want to do that, right? The best cash buyers, they want you bring them deals as a wholesaler. They want to close deals with you. They understand the more deals they close and the happier they make you, the more deals you're going to bring them. And, I just see time and time again, a lot of people have never taken action. They're worried about all these what ifs. And a lot of these what ifs can be just solved by finding better cash buyers or great cash buyers and not leaving that till the nth hour. When you have a deal under contract, you're scrambling around trying to find a cash buyer. And I just can't stress that enough.
Totally, yeah. That's when things get dicey, when you're really trying to push the limit, you're down to the wire, you're on your last day of a contingency, trying to slap this contract around and try to find some random buyer. Yeah, that's when, obviously you do want to have strong contracts involved, but I couldn't agree more, Alex. That's why we always teach having your buyers ahead of time, and you have rapport built with them. You understand their criteria extremely well so that you ensure the highest likelihood of closing on any contracts that you're actually going into. So that is really one of the strongest ways and the smartest ways to mitigate risk in wholesale real estate and really any deal is just, having great relationships and working with buyers that will close, right? That will do what they say they're going to do. The buyers that we work with, they are very reputable, and we will take their word for it when they say they're going to do something. I mean, we still will sign contracts, of course, because the title company will need contracts. They'll need an assignment contract to actually facilitate the transaction. But we pride ourselves on working with buyers that we've built relationships with and that will do what they say they're going to do because they're just consistently buying and they're always looking for a great deal.
Yeah, just overall trustworthy people that do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
If you work with those types of people, then you can get it down on paper. That's very important. Get everything down on paper that you agree upon. But then you have the confidence that they're going to fulfill and follow through. Awesome. So let's answer another community question. And we kind of touched on this real quick, but when assigning a contract using the assignment addendum, how should we have the cash buyer sign this? Should we, what would you recommend? Should we go drive over to them and get it signed in person, or is there an easier way, you think?
If sometimes your cash buyer might be sitting right next to you. So if you're lucky to have that situation, then, print it out. Each one of you can sign on the dotted line with a pen, and then you can scan it and then send it to the title company, send everybody a copy. But usually that's not the case, right? We do a lot of virtual wholesaling. We do a lot of long distance, contract flipping, if you want to call it that. And we generally will use DocuSign, right? DocuSign is one of the leading, if not the leading, electronic signature platform, and a lot of people in real estate especially are very familiar with it. So usually some form of DocuSign, right? There's other similar software like that, like Digital Ink is one of them, AuthentiSign. So there are other software that you can use to get digital signatures, which is what we generally will recommend. But that's how we would usually do that, and just have them simply sign on the dotted line and make sure they agree with everything, and send them the purchase agreement as well so that they're well aware of what they're being assigned, right? Because you remember, this is an addendum to a purchase and sale agreement. This isn't a contract on its own, right? This is an addendum to a contract. So that's why I emphasized earlier that you can't have a true real estate assignment to wholesale a property without that first wholesale contract, right? The purchase and sale agreement. So you do want to make sure that they are aware of it and they have reviewed it before signing this. But once you both have signatures on it, then that's where you can send it to the title company and off to closing you go.
There we go. Nailed that. Yeah, we like DocuSign. We've been using it, over a decade now. Just easy to send it via email, sign everything via email. Hands down, going to be the fastest, easiest way to get anyone to sign a purchase agreement or assignment addendum. All right, let's hit this next question. How can you wholesale and or assign a deal to a cash buyer if the realtor writes up the contract for you? Isn't their contract non-assignable? It sounds like there's a big general assumption there.
Yeah, definitely a big assumption, but a great question. I mean, we love wholesaling real estate deals that are listed on the market. If you guys have watched any of our content, you guys know that we do a lot of deals from the MLS. We love wholesaling with real estate agents in multiple states around the country. Our students wholesale properties from the MLS in almost every state. So it really just depends at the end of the day, right? We don't know which particular purchase agreement is being used. Realtors may or may not have an assignable purchase and sale agreement, right? So there are assignable purchase and sale agreements, and there are some that have language built in that makes them not assignable unless there's the seller's written permission. So it is important to note that contract law, really, no matter what state you're in, does state that purchase agreements are assignable by default. Now, knowing that, unless your real estate purchase and sale agreement has a clause that prohibits assignment, then it is assignable by nature. So we will see, such as the California residential purchase agreement, right? The California RPA, and as well as other realtor purchase agreements, they will have a clause that says, this contract is not assignable unless the seller and all parties essentially sign and agree to it after the fact, and that the seller may not withhold consent, right? May not unreasonably withhold consent. So essentially, you have to read the contract. So like most of the purchase and sale agreements that we receive from realtors are assignable, right? So we work with deals in Texas, Florida. We have a lot of deals happening in those states. So those agreements, right, the TREC contract and the Florida Realtor contract, especially the TREC contract, doesn't have any assignable language baked into it. So as long as there's no additional amendments or language, that is assignable by default. And you can simply use this assignment addendum right along with that. Now, if you have a contract that has language prohibiting assignments, then all you have to do is get all parties to sign an amendment, which says that, hey, I am now going to be closing in a different entity. We are now closing in the name of my financing partner or my money partner who's going to be bringing the cash to the deal. We have multiple entities, and we are going to be closing in a different one. So we're very excited to be closing on this deal, under the same terms of this agreement. We're excited to close this deal with you. Like, everything's on track. We're just going to be closing in a different entity. Boom. There you go. So all you have to do is amend the original contract, which is something that happens in almost every single real estate transaction. So every contract, I think this is like a big aha moment for people who haven't done a deal, is that even if you enter into a purchase agreement, you can always make changes to that later, which are also legally binding. So you can amend any term in a contract as long as everyone agrees to it. So it's a very simple thing to overcome, and it doesn't cause a lot of friction. And this is why we'll enter into non-assignable agreements, knowing that we can simply change the name later.
Absolutely. And this question was an important one. This was from YouTube. I've seen this hundreds of times throughout the years. There's just a big general assumption that an on-market deal, on-market contract is not assignable. And like you said, it depends. If there's nothing about assigning or prohibiting assigning in there, then we just use an assignment addendum, and we and the cash buyer agree to assign the contract. In the case where it prohibits assignment, then we have the buyer, the seller, and us make a change to the contract. We get the addendum signed by all parties, and then we're able to assign it. So I think there's a lot of people that have not even pursued on-market properties because they have this false belief that you can't assign them for whatever reason, there is out there. But you said some great things, that every contract can be changed if all parties agree. Every contract can be changed. Everything is negotiable. So even it says that you can't do something in a contract, if you then get all parties to agree to make that change, then you can assign it. You can do whatever you want in the contract. You can change the closing date. You can change the purchase price.
Exactly.
You can change everything in the contract. And I think once you start to understand that, wow, these contracts are really important, knowing what's in the contracts are important, knowing that everything is negotiable, knowing that if we can create another addendum, changing anything else we want, doesn't have to be an assignment. You have a lot of power. I think you have a lot of freedom now to understand, like, okay, I can start to be creative in real estate. I can start to close deals. Not everything, has to be done in exact certain way. I can change and modify things as we go. And some of the best deals we've done have been because we need to extend the closing date, have been because we need to assign the deal 3 times, to be able to close it, because we have made the mistakes of having buyers that weren't able to follow through. So these are the things to expect to come up. And I think if you're armed with this knowledge, armed with these expectations, you're going to have a way higher likelihood of success as opposed to not.
Totally. Yeah. And I think especially if you haven't bought anything on market, you haven't wholesaled any properties on market with agents, then I think there might be this limiting belief of approaching the conversation with the agent. So, I mean, we definitely help a lot of newer wholesalers have these conversations so that they have that finesse and they have the confidence to approach it and realize it's not that big of a deal. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's something, I'm glad you mentioned it, because people shy away from on-market wholesaling, but it is very, very lucrative. There's always new properties, and it's just a matter of navigating that conversation if you even need to have it in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're ultra familiar with those conversations. Have them all the time. All right, so we nailed that one. Let's go to this last YouTube question. Do you add closing costs and agents' commissions to the assignment price for the end buyer, or is it just the accepted offer price plus the fee is now the assignment price?
Yeah, I'm really glad this question came up because that is the other thing why we love assignments, is because you don't have to pay closing costs, right? So the assignment fee, right, the assignment price is just a flat fee, and you're not having to pay closing costs as the wholesaler. And so this is again one of the amazing things about assigning a contract and wholesaling using this method, is that your assignment fee is the total fee that you're going to be paid at closing. So if you're charging $15,000 for your assignment fee, then that is what's going to be paid to you at closing, by title or sometimes directly by the end buyer, right? That cash buyer can pay you your assignment fee. And so you're not paying closing costs, right? Unless that's part of your deal with your cash buyer, right? We've had deals where we did offer to pay closing costs for our cash buyer because they just wanted that flat price. They didn't want the surprise of additional closing costs. So that's called being creative when it comes to closing these wholesale deals. So sometimes, you will have to pay closing costs, but 99% of the time, it's just going to be your gross wholesale fee that you're receiving at the end of the day, right? Your total fee without any closing costs or commissions or fees or anything like that. It's just you're getting that total amount wired to you, or you get a wholesale check in the mail, and so no closing costs involved, right? When you're double closing, you will have multiple sets of closing costs, right? When you're buying the property and then when you're immediately reselling the property even on the same day. So that can amount to thousands of dollars of closing costs that come out of your profit. So again, another big benefit of assigning contracts over double closings or other methods of wholesaling real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that situation you brought up where we paid for closing costs on the assignment, that was with a really great cash buyer that we have trust with that asked us to do it. And he's always performed, closed every single time, wanted to make the deal a little less hairy for him. And so we did that. But like you said, 9 times out of 10, when we're signing, we're not paying for closing costs or anything along those lines, which is great about the assignment. It's just simpler. It's simpler than other ways.
Totally. It's much more predictable as far as how much you're going to be earning. And even for the cash buyer, they know how much they're going to have to pay the wholesaler for their assignment fees. So it's just a clean, simple, and quick way to essentially flip a house, right? You're flipping a contract without actually having to buy the house. So
absolutely, Ryan. Nailed that one. Well, that wraps it up for the questions we have from the community. So if you enjoyed today's video, what I want you to do is absolutely download the contracts at realestateskills.com/contracts. Not only will you get the assignment addendum, but also our residential purchase agreement that can be used. And if you enjoyed today's video, please leave a comment below. Leave any questions. As you saw today, we responded to some questions, and we love helping you out. There's nothing we love more than seeing you win. And if you want to learn more about real estate investing and wholesaling, flipping, buying rental properties, check out realestateskills.com. If you found value today, please share this with someone in your network, someone that you know. we want to help empower them and change their lives as well. So wholesaling specifically changed our lives. It was our start into real estate. And so you may have the power to help someone change their life too by teaching them how to flip real estate contracts, how to wholesale property the right way, and how to stay protected. All right. So this is Alex Martinez, Ryan Zomorodi. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you soon.